If there's one question I can't seem to get away from in my comment sections right now, it's whether or not it's actually a good time to build a new gaming PC. With so much new hardware on the horizon, some of it having already landed, it can be difficult to decide when the right time to build a gaming PC actually is. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about what hardware we're expecting, what impact this might have on existing stock, and setting some expectations about what is to come, so you guys can decide if now is really a sensible time to build a gaming PC or not. Let's do this. The GeekaWhat G6X is here, packing plenty of power with the Intel Core HX processor lineup and NVIDIA GeForce RTX 40 series laptop GPUs for powerful gaming, Dolby Atmos integration, power delivery 3.0 for fast Type-C charging, and a 90% screen to bezel ratio, provide an immersive experience with all the home comforts. The 165Hz refresh rate and 16:10 aspect ratio make it great for gaming on the go or getting work done. Learn more at the first links in the description below. Now there is a lot to unpack in this video, so feel free to use the timestamps to navigate through, but I want to start with my opinion on the market right now. And if I had to give you one word to describe it, I would say it's a bit of a mess. Take, for example, AMD's brand new X870 lineup of motherboards. A great range of motherboards with great features at pretty competitive prices. The problem, the new Ryzen 9000 CPUs that were released with them just aren't that great. They offer better power efficiency than the previous generation and a small bump in performance too, but the pricing is just way out the leagues of what is really reasonable for what you're getting. Take the price difference right now between a 7600X and a 9600X. These chips provide nearly identical performance. We're talking single-digit percentage points, and you're looking at a really chunky price differential between these two chips. So then you might think the solution is to go for last-gen parts or Ryzen 7000 processors. But look at the 7800 X3D and you'll see crazy market pricing for that right now too. To top it off, I've been doing some 4090 base builds recently for those wanting to spend the most money possible at 4K, and you'll see that the price of NVIDIA's top-end GPUs are actually higher than they've ever been. And I think what we're seeing here is all the manufacturers trying to hedge their bets and play off against each other. The recent announcement of new Core Ultra CPUs from Intel, which may be the worst kept secret in living history, is exciting, and I think is something that could put Intel back on the map as far as being the best choice for gamers goes. A position Intel hasn't really held since arguably it launched 12th gen, which is what, like 3 years ago at this point. You can bet your bottom dollar that if these Intel chips are as good as we're hoping that they're going to be, AMD will react on the pricing front and try and undercut Intel to retain their value proposition. It's something that AMD always do when they release hardware. They bring it out at an MSRP they don't really have any intention of holding before trashing the price later, meaning you guys never actually know what a good price for that part really is. Oh, and X3D chips? Latest rumors suggest we could see those as early as mid-November, which aligns with some of the things that I'm hearing, and you can bet that AMD are keeping a close eye on those Intel Core Ultra benchmarks. Which brings me on to GPUs, an area where we've seen big news from AMD as of late. Now, GPUs is a really interesting area because it's a segment where, like it or not, NVIDIA has been utterly dominant in the last few years. 30 series, NVIDIA wiped the floor with AMD, who frankly really had little to compete. And while 40 series has given AMD a better inroad in terms of the mid-range, the high-end they just haven't been there. And that is because AMD is increasingly focusing on the mid-range of the market. In fact, in a recent interview, AMD said they're basically giving up on the high-end segment of the market and instead focusing on the cards that are going to cost, we guess, between $300 and about $600 US. Now, this is good news for the majority of gamers who want to shop at a better value price point. Now, while this may seem like news, it's already something AMD are basically doing anyway. The 7700 XT, 7800 XT, and 7900 GRE cards are already AMD's most popular cards, and the ones where we've seen the widest take-up from board partners releasing their own models. It's also an area where AMD have been hyper price competitive. The bit that worries me about AMD bailing out of the top end of the market, though, comes in terms of features. We already know that AMD are a little behind NVIDIA when it comes to things like ray tracing and like FSR, which just plainly isn't as good as DLSS. That's not me trying to push the NVIDIA train even further ahead. I mean, has anyone seen their stock price recently? Because I know a lot of you guys watching this couldn't give, a crap about ray tracing or DLSS or FSR for that fact. fact. But one thing that is shown to put buyers off AMD, and you only have to look at current GPU sales market share to understand this, is that the feature set just isn't quite there. How do you pioneer features like ray tracing, like frame generation and upscaling through those top-end hero SKUs? Look back when NVIDIA first launched ray tracing on the RTX 2080. That was a card that had loads of power, and we're now seeing all of those features filter down to more entry-level cards like the 4060 Ti, 4070 and 4070 Super. All of this does give us a good direction as to where things are going though, and what hardware releases you can expect to come out in the next few months. So here goes nothing. Intel Core Ultra CPUs is first. We already know about those, we know what Intel are going to do, and I would expect Intel to flesh out the remainder of the lineup with lower end non-overclockable chips, i3 CPUs, so Core Ultra 3 CPUs in the new year. I'd also expect them to bring cheaper motherboard chipsets at that point as board partners look to catch up with all of the evolution of the Core Ultra architecture. AMD, we already have Ryzen 9000. Again, we may see a couple of extra SKUs be released in Q1 or Q2 of 2025. Equivalents of, say, the Ryzen 7500F, maybe a new version of that, a non-boosted Ryzen 5 9600 at a cheaper price point, and of course, hopefully some X3D CPUs. We could see these as early as mid-November from AMD, who look like they've already got their new 3D V-Cache alternatives ready to go. NVIDIA is obviously the big one a lot of people are talking about right now. We're starting to see leaks and rumours around the 5090, and again, that is going to be a good indication that we're expecting to see that at the start of next year. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would be betting on CES as the launch date for the NVIDIA cards. Make no mistake though, I wouldn't be expecting to see lower end cards like the 5060, 5070, and potentially a 5070 Ti until much later in 2025, which gives you a good hint if you're looking at building, say, a mid-range gaming PC, that it might not be worth the wait. Intel Arc is a big enigma in all of this. I honestly expected Arc 2 to land by now, and while Arc hasn't been fantastic for Intel, it's not been a bad first stab at creating a GPU architecture from the ground up. Arc 2 could be the thing that provides AMD with the real competition at the mid-range. Again, I'm not expecting Intel to compete anytime soon with a 4080 or 4090 or potential future 5090, most certainly not, but it would be good to have them as a player in the space. I'd also expect to see cheaper B-series updated chipsets for AMD in the new year. That's going to be great for the Ryzen 9000 architecture of processors too. Now, all of this creates an inflection point where we're waiting for probably the biggest tranche of hardware releases in the shortest period of time that I've seen in many years. My concern though with all of this, and I really don't wish to be too negative, is that it's all just going to be too expensive. We're already seeing it. I read the comments from you guys on our build guides, and a lot of people just don't see the value in a lot of this new hardware that costs so much more money and doesn't offer a great deal in return. And I have to say, I agree. Like it or not, and this might be quite controversial, an RTX 4060 Ti or 4070, as much as I'm not a fan of either card in the current landscape, is a more than enough gaming performance for most people. And AMD, to their defense, can't really do a whole load more, you wouldn't imagine, with the 7800 X3D when they come to inevitably release the 9800 X3D. That's not to say I'm giving up on performance upgrades and improvements, but for most people, you're not really going to need a great deal more than this. These new motherboards are fantastic, but they're a formality when it comes to providing better connectivity. Of course, you would buy this rather than the one it replaces because it's just more up to date and is already costing a similar price. Ultimately, people are voting with their wallets, and if NVIDIA, AMD or Intel for that fact think that next year is the time to bring out new hardware at much higher prices, I think they may well just get a nasty surprise. So how does all this link with the question I asked at the start of the video? Should you wait before building a gaming PC? And it really depends. Now, let's throw a few scenarios out there. If you're at the top end of the market and you want the best that you can buy, then obviously wait. Now's a terrible time to build. There's no doubt about it. Similarly, gamers looking to build a PC for $2,500 might want to consider whether NVIDIA bring out a card like the 5080 to provide that bit more impetus to upgrade. But on the mid-range end of the market, I honestly find it hard to recommend waiting. Yes, new hardware may push down pricing on existing designs, and that can be a good reason to hold off before building, but I'm not that convinced about how much lower chips like the Ryzen 7600 7600 and GPUs like the 77, 78 and 7900 from AMD can really go. As with every new launch, it's always about setting expectations that the new flashy thing that arrives will be more expensive than what we're used to right now, and while prices will fall, early adopters will always pay the higher price for those new features. I have got my hopes out for 50 series, and I'm honestly a little unsure of what NVIDIA will bring to the table. It might be that they knock our socks off with 20 or 30% performance gains over the previous generation, but the last few releases just don't seem to indicate that that's going to be the case. And let's face it, without new high-powered GPUs, the rest is all kind of secondary. The great news is that there's loads of awesome new PC cases and CPU coolers that have hit the market recently. Parts that can be particularly exciting with the right CPU and GPU to install inside. Let me know what your thoughts are. Are you guys going to wait? Are you looking to build a new gaming PC? Or are you hoping to snag a deal on hardware that will soon become last gen? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.